Okay, let's talk about four math skills that every adult must know. Now, this word must, that's a little strong. Maybe we should use the word should, but you make a determination whether adults must know this or should know this. It's a good idea to know these math skills because this is kind of everyday practical math. Okay, and you went to school for a reason. Hopefully, you learned something to apply it in real life. Now, a lot of the stuff that you learned in school, of course, we do not use. I don't use only a fraction of what I learned in school, and that's just kind of the way it is. But in terms of math, we're talking about basic educational skills here. Like reading, writing, arithmetic, that type of thing. So these are the four math skills. Now, there's other skills that are important as well, but these are the four math skills that I'm going to highlight that I think are absolutely critical. And I'm going to give you some suggestions on how you can improve in these math skills in just 1 second. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help learning programs. And so, if you're interested in learning mathematics, you can learn math with me. I'm going to leave a link to my math help program in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different math courses ranging from pre-algebra, algebra 1 geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calculus. I also do a lot in the area of test preparation. So if you're studying for a particular test like the GED, SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, ASVAB, Accuplacer, maybe a teacher certification exam, maybe the CLEP exam. There's a ton of exams out there, and guess what? They all have in common, they all have math on them. So someone thinks math's pretty important. So if you're studying for one of these exams, just go to my website, check out my full course catalog. If I do not have your exam, drop me a line and I'll help you the best I can. I also do a lot with homeschooling. So if you homeschool, I have a great homeschool learning program, then obviously help those of you that are having a tough time in your current math course. Now, if you're an adult and you're not taking a math course right now, then you can kind of disregard this advice, but maybe you should just listen anyways, because you might say, you know what, I need to brush up on my math skills, and maybe you will go back and take a basic math course. But here's the key to learning math, okay? It really comes down to your habits, okay? And the most important habit, in my opinion, is note taking, okay? This is the activity that over decades of teaching mathematics, I can point to this one activity as being a strong indicator of success in learning math. Okay. Now, why is that? Because note taking, right? Those students, by the way, who take great notes almost always seem to have done pretty well. But note taking, that activity, if you're taking great math notes, is a way to stay focused. Okay. And that is the key to success. And if you're an adult, you obviously know that already by just living life, that if you can't stay focused, if you're distracted, you're not going to learn things as well as you possibly can. So if you get distracted and you take so notes or maybe no notes, you're not going to do well in math. Think of focus as kind of like a sine wave, something like this, like an EKG. If you're highly focused, that's great, okay? But you want to kind of stay in this mode. But as soon as you get a text notification on your cell phone, guess what? Your focus goes down to here, and then your teacher says something super important right there, and you miss it. Then you're like, oh, I'm back being focused, but you missed this part, okay? And then your best friend says something to you, and you're off of your focus. Focus is difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, all right? It's a simple concept, but simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, but it is the key to success. It's the foundational starting point. Okay, so if you are taking math or intend to take math, work on your notes. Okay, but in the meantime, you can use my notes to study from. Those would include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. You can find the links to those notes in the description of this video. Okay, so let's get into these four math skills. Now, these are, in my opinion, okay, these are this like really, really universal skills that you want to, at a minimum, know. Now, of course, I think math is important being a math person. Do you need to know calculus? Does every single adult need to know calculus or the quadratic equation and all that kind of good stuff back from, college or high school mathematics and stuff like that? No, the answer is absolutely not. You could be happy and successful without knowing what this is, it's not necessary unless you're like an engineer or something along those lines, or you're going to college, or you have to take more, advanced math classes for whatever reason there is. So that's not what I'm talking about in this video. Now, I'm not saying or minimizing that this stuff isn't, impactful or extremely important in our society, but the everyday person, doesn't need to know this as minimum level of mathematics. So I'm not here to make that case. Maybe someone else can make that case. What I'm talking about is practical math, everyday kind of math that you're going to run into. And let's take a look at these 4 math skills that I think everyone must know, every adult must know. And let's start off with our first one, and that is percent. Okay. So you can't go anywhere without seeing this symbol, the percent symbol. Okay, you see this every day, whether you're at the store and you see sales discounts, or you're looking up, or you look at your bank statements, credit card statements, your mortgage, your car loan. It doesn't make a difference. You see this symbol everywhere. It's the percent symbol. So you need to know how to deal with it, because this is basic finance, right? The most basic level of finance, you have to understand percent. So let's take a look at 2 problems. And I already kind of did the problems, but we're going to just do a quick review. And by the way, as I stated, if you want to go back and brush up and relearn mathematics at a basic level, I'm going to give you 2 suggestions. One, if you like my teaching style, I have a ton of videos in my pre-algebra playlist on my YouTube channel on percent and all these other skills I'm already talking about. So that's a good starting point. But if you want a more formal way, you might want to consider taking my pre-algebra course. Okay, so that's kind of like my most basic level, but I do cover these skills I'm going to be talking about. All right, let's talk about this problem right here. So if I want to find 7% of, let's say, $34, right? How do I do that? Well, if you recall, you got to take this percent and turn it into a decimal. So how do I do that? Well, technically what you do is you take that number, okay, you drop the little percent symbol, you take the number and you divide by 100. But most of you probably remember, well, don't we just move the decimal point? Yes, that's probably a better way to think about it. Now, of course, you do need to know this, but here is 7% is the same thing as 7.0%. So to go from a percent to a decimal, and that's what we need to do first, is we're going to move the decimal point over 2 places to the left. So that's going to be 0.07. Okay, so that's really the first part of working with percent, is taking this percent, 7%, and turning it into its decimal equivalent. So that's 0.07. Then I just multiply by the value. So I'm trying to find a percent of. So 7% of 34. 0.07 times 34, and don't feel bad about using a calculator. That's what they're there for, to help us out with this arithmetic. And when I do that, I get 2.38. In this case, 7% of $34 would be $2.38. All right. Now, hopefully most of you know how to do this. Now, if you forgot this, well, maybe this little refresher kind of like, was enough. But I would encourage you to kind of, follow up and maybe do a little bit more practice, just to make sure you got this, basic percent um, uh, concept down. This is just a percent of a number. Now let's look at something a little bit more interesting. Now I'm kind of rushing through this because I don't want to turn this into a full lesson. I just want to highlight the skills you need to know. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. 12 is 15% of what number? Interesting. The answer is 80. All right, now I'm going to show you how I like to do it, but you should pause the video and think about if you know how to do this, with the way you learn percent. So if you know how to do it the way you learn percent, then stick with that way, kind of disregard the way I'm showing you. But if you're totally lost, well, you might want to pay attention. Okay, so remember, when I want to find a percent of a number, I'm going to take the percent, turn it into a decimal. Okay, I'm going to turn it into a decimal, and then I'm going to multiply by the number. So here we have to use some basic algebra. So 15% of what number? Well, in algebra, a number, when I'm saying what number, that's just a variable x. So it's going to be 15%. I'm going to change that to a decimal, 0.15. We just talked about how to do that. I'm just moving the decimal point over. And then I'm going to multiply it by some unknown number. I'm going to use the variable x. But I know the answer is 12. Okay, so let's interpret this right here. 15% of some number is 12. Okay, now if we look at my original problem here, 12 is, okay, that word is in mathematics means the equal sign. 12 is equal to 15% of what number? So if I can figure out this basic equation, 0.15x equals 12, then I could answer this question. So let's go ahead and see how I do that. So here we have 0.15x equals 12. To solve this basic equation, all I need to do is divide both sides of the equation by 0.15. Now I am getting into some really basic algebra, but you know, there are other ways to think about how to solve this particular problem when you were learning percent way back in elementary and middle school. Okay, so if we take 12 and we divide it by 0.15, we get 80. Okay, so 12 is 15% of 80. That is the answer. So you're going to be working with percent problems, you know, that are beyond just these kind of simple applications, 7%, you know, like a percent of a number. You might have something a little bit more interesting this way. It does come up, okay? Believe me when I tell you, it does come up. Yeah, you know, when you're dealing with mortgages, how much percent down in you want on a house, you'll be surprised how often these other type of percent problems show up in real life, okay? All right, again, if this was confusing to you, I understand that this is not going to be a full lesson on percent. Follow through. Two suggestions again, just on my pre-algebra playlist, look at all my percent videos, or just maybe take my pre-algebra class and really upgrade your math skills to where they need to be. Okay, now let's take a look at my second skill that all adults really need to know, and that is fractions. Okay, just working with basic fractions. And we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So let's just take a look at this example. Let's say you're measuring out, you know, something in your room. Maybe you're doing some flooring, and let's say this is feet, 10.5 feet. Then you got to add another 1.75 feet. You got your tape measure out. You're doing some home project, and then you got to go to Home Depot or Lowe's to buy some flooring or whatever the case is. You know, you'll have to do some basic math here, right? So, you know, addition of fractions is typically adding and subtracting fractions, what typically gets most people some difficulty because this involves finding the lowest common denominator. This is pretty easy, but just working with fractions in general is a skill you should know, okay? So let's take a look at this right here, 10 1/2 plus 1 3/4. So how could I do this? Well, let's see here. Well, I have 10 1/2 plus 1 3/4. So I can say, well, this is the same thing as 10 plus 1. And then I got this 1/2 and 3/4 right here. I can kind of add these up. All right, so if I add this 1/2 and this 3/4 over here, add that up, and then I can add this 10 and 1. It's the same. Probably most people will logically, you know, do it in this manner. Okay, if you had your tape measure out, you'd be like, okay, 10 and 1, that's 11 feet. Then I got to figure out what 1/2, ½ inch, and 3/4 of an inch is. So you're going to kind of go over here. And we got to figure this out right here. So we got 1/2 plus 3/4. We already got this 11 right there. So how can I deal with this simple fraction? Well, if you notice, the denominators, this is 2, this is 4, the denominators are not common. So this is where you need to know the LCD. Now, I've done a ton of videos on what I call like one of the best fraction hacks. This video has over 1 million views, I believe. And it's an easy way to deal with adding and subtracting fractions. But here, let's just stick with this basic concept of the lowest common denominator. So I have 1/2 plus 3/4. What is the LCD here? Okay, what's the lowest common denominator? Hopefully, most of you said it's 4. So what I can do is rewrite this fraction 1/2 as the fraction 2/4, because 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. And then I got 1/2, but I'm going to write it as 2/4 plus 3/4. Now, this is the way I want to work with this fraction because the denominators are the same. Okay, they're common denominators. They have something in common. They have the same number. It's the lowest common denominator. So now I can write that denominator 4 and add the numerators. So that's 2 plus 3, that's 5. So that's 5/4. So remember, I still have my 11, and now I have 5/4. So how can I figure that out? What is 5/4? Well, let's go ahead and take this 5 and divide it by 4. So 5 divided by 4, 4 goes into 5, 1. 1 times 4 is 4. I subtract this basic division, right? So I subtract, I get 1. So my remainder is 1/4. So 5/4 is 1 and 1/4. Okay, so here I have 11 plus 1 and 1/4, which is going to be 12 and 1/4. Okay, so think about it. If you had your tape measure out and you were doing some sort of project, maybe you were measuring blinds, curtains, flooring, carpet. Yeah, I think I said that. Anything and anything, you need to know how to deal with fractions. This comes up in real life. Now, of course, you can kind of look at your tape measure, but you'll be surprised if you have a tape measure at home. How are you going to really be able to, really use it? You can read, the values on it, hopefully. But if you're doing any kind of project, you're going to have to, add or subtract and figure things out. So fractions, very, very, very important. Now, again, we only did a real quick basic example of adding, but I would really encourage you to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. Not that difficult. Again, I have a ton of videos on this in my pre-algebra channel, pre-algebra playlist on my YouTube channel. Again, I teach this thoroughly in my pre-algebra course. Okay, so that's just a highlight. What I'm doing so far is not what I'm doing so far is just trying to review these skills, but kind of trying to give you an illustration of them. I'm not trying to teach you all these skills and maybe a quick refresher on this, but if you're lost in this, it's worthy to do more than beyond than just this video, okay? Because this video is really not covering enough. All right, let's talk about my third thing. I think positive and negative numbers need to be there because when you look at like bank statements or you're dealing with basic accounting, you do see negative numbers and we need to know how to work with them. So here's an example. Let's say you got your basic credit card statement or your bank statement, and it says, oh, you have $1,000, but then you have this. You have a negative 1,200. Well, what does this mean right here? Okay, well, most of us know this means debt, or it could be like an overdraft. Maybe you had $1,000 in your bank account, and you went and you wrote a check for $1,200, and the bank was saying, sure, no problem, we'll cash that check. So you have a negative $1,200. So what's your financial status here? Okay, well, you owe $200. Okay, so you're in debt $200. So positive and negative numbers have real meaning, real application in life, especially financial life. Okay, so again, everyone has to deal with money. This is especially an adult. I'm pretty sure you relate. You're paying your bills and everything else like that. We're dealing with inflation. Got a lot of expensive stuff going on. Hey, listen, you're going to see negatives. You're going to see positive. You got to do this basic bookkeeping. So you need to know how to add, subtract, and while we're at it, let's go ahead and just remember how to multiply and divide positive and negative numbers. So here is some quick problems. Again, it's not covering everything, but just a fast review. If you want to go ahead and just test your skills in positive and negative numbers, go ahead and answer these guys real quick. So -7 plus -3, what is the answer? Okay. Well, this shouldn't take long. You shouldn't even have to pause the video. Most of you should be, if you know what you're doing with positive and negative numbers, you'd be like, oh, that's -10. And if you got that right, I must give you a check mark. This is like having -$7 in debt, and then you acquire another $3 in debt, so you have a total of $10 in debt. Okay, so again, I'm not going to teach you exactly how to add positive and negative numbers, but this is just a quick review. All right, so now we're multiplying two negative numbers, so what's the rule? Okay, -5 times -2, that is a positive 10, right? So when the signs are the same, and by the way, the rule for multiplication and division are the same. Okay, if the signs are the same, negative times a negative, the answer is positive. Okay, if the signs are different, okay, answer is negative. So here we have two negatives, answer is positive. So how about this? Remember, multiplication and division, the rule is the same. I have a negative divided by a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. So I just do the basic division. 20 divided by 4 is 5. That's -5. Okay, so this is another skill, positive and negative numbers. Again, I'm just doing a quick overview. All right, we're not mastering these skill sets, but you encounter everything I've gone over. You do encounter. So let's talk about this last skill, and I'm going to call it the order of operations. Okay. Now, the order of operations will come up in real life as if you're working with some sort of formula, some basic application of some numbers where you have to kind of, you have to multiply or divide, add, subtract. You got to kind of have to do simplify some mathematical expression, and this can come up in any number of sorts of way. Again, financial applications, working on a project. But let's take a look at how important the order of operations is. Now, before we even take a look at these two examples, let's just read this term, okay? Order of operations. Now, what does this mean? Okay, well, we want to apply a specific order to mathematical operations. And a mathematical operator are these things. It's adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, taking powers, etc. It's what we do with numbers. Okay, if I have a number and I have another number, well, what can we do then with those numbers? Well, I can add, subtract, multiply, divide. I can perform these various operations. But in mathematics, when you have an expression where there's more than one operation, we need to kind of know the order, because if we don't have um, a specific order to follow, we can get all kinds of crazy answers. We can get the right answer, we get the wrong answer. So let's take a look at this example just to kind of illustrate that. So here, if I have 16 divided by 4 times 2, I could do this problem in two ways. Now, in both ways are logical and they do make sense, but of course, one is right and what's wrong. So let's take a look at them. So here I have 16 divided by 4 times 2. I can take this 16 and divide by 4 first. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. And I'm going to like, okay, that's 4 times 2, so my answer is 8. So that seems reasonable, right? How about over here? Well, I got 16 divided by 4 times 2, same problem, but this time I'm going to go, all right, I want to do 4 times 2, that's 8. So I got 16 divided by 8. Now this is 2. So one way I got an answer of 2, I mean an answer of 8, and another way I got an answer of 2, but it doesn't look like I made any errors here, right? I mean, it looks like I multiplied correctly here, I divided correctly here. One is right and one is wrong. Okay, do you know which one it is? Which one's right and which one's wrong? It's a good little pop quiz. Well, what tells us this? Well, what tells us what's right or wrong is this little phrase here, PEMDAS. So you might recall learning this from school, but this is that please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we have to look at this from left to right. P stands for parentheses or grouping symbols. E stands for powers. And then M and D stand for multiplication and division. And then A and S stand for addition and subtraction. And we do whatever comes first from left to right. Now, this is a real classic place where students get confused. So what operations do I have here? I have a division, and I have a multiplication. So when we look at this PEMDAS phrase, most people are saying, oh, we have to do the M before the D. We must do that, so this must be correct because we're doing the M first. This is wrong, okay? So what ends up happening with the PEMDAS is whatever comes first from left to right. So multiplication, division, if you have division before multiplication, then go ahead and do division because it comes first from left to right. So when I'm looking at this expression, what comes first from left to right? Division. So this is the way to do it. All right, so I got to do whatever division. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So again, working with numbers and simplifying mathematical expressions, just basic arithmetic is, applying to order of operations. You need to have a full understanding of the order of operations, or you'll end up making mistakes like this, which a ton of students do, and of course, you'll get the wrong answer. So these are 4 basic math skills. Let's go and wrap this up. The order of operations, working with positive and negative numbers, fractions, okay, and percent. I mean, if in the real world, these are very 4 practical skills that you want to, really master. So if you're an adult and you're like, you know what, I need to improve in mathematics, I would personally start by these skills and then decide for yourself if you really want to get, upgrade your knowledge into more, advanced mathematics like algebra and, geometry. And it's good to know that stuff as well, for sure, especially if you want to go back to school, maybe work on getting a degree or certification, whatever the case might be. But in terms of just surviving in our everyday real life world, having these four math skills would definitely go a long way. All right, so if this video was in some way helpful, please consider smashing that like button. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. I've been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have over 1,000 plus videos, basic to advanced mathematics, all there for you. My goal is to try to make math clear and understandable. So hopefully, I'm achieving my goal. And if I am, hey, watch my videos. That's what they're there for. Of course, I'm posting new content all the time, but my best math help will be within my math help program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics journeys. Thank you for your time and have a great day.